Okay, Aldo. I was thinking about a meeting we had last summer at the Rijksmuseum. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And we walked through the galleries of the Oriental art.
Yes.
And you took a photograph of
the little head with made from...
Yes, a wooden seated, I think, Buddhist monk.
Yeah.
With a knot on his head of his hair. It was bound like in a knot shape, very elegant.
Yes, yeah.
And that made me think of where does your thinking start? Where lies the source of your inspiration when you create something? That's a very fundamental question to ask an artist. But I think you took this photograph. What did you do with it, for example? Did you store it, or did you?
Yes, I've stored it for sure. Only if the picture turned out not to be beautiful, then I probably have thrown it away. But otherwise, it's still there.
Actually, I took a photograph of you taking the photograph.
Oh, really?
I can send it to you because I was struck by the fact that you are wearing your hair in the same way. So there was a kind of repetition, but that's another thing.
Would like to see it.
But it made me wonder why you took this photograph and whether it could be a starting point for thinking about a new object, a new form. Maybe.
Yeah. I think often in first stance I'm not conscious even. So of course I feel it when I'm drawn to something that attracts me, and I'm not always capable of capturing it in the way that I want it to capture. But I think how it mainly goes is that I'm collecting similar images. So and then I think it takes a little while before I realize that I'm in search for something typical, so a certain line, and then I see this line here, but also abroad, and then I become conscious from, okay, so this is what I'm searching for, this is what I'm questioning. But also, we were just speaking about Instagram, and it was Rutger Graas who makes the bigger works.
Yeah.
And he shared a photo of the process of the making of Anura. It's a little stool, and that was, let's say, halfway, and then it's still very fat and bulky, with big parts, a little bit stiff, and that image stayed with me. So the original Anura was always a little bit too aesthetic, too delicate, too nice, I felt after we made it. And then there was this image, and this image has led now to Sitting Table, which is part of the show for Carpenters Workshop Gallery. So it could happen that I daydream about it, or that I do think what I know that are moments, that are precious moments, is when I lay in the sun. I love to lay in the sun. This feeling of the sun burning on my skin. I love that feeling, but also that you can lay and that you do nothing, but actually I'm very active because I'm thinking. Yeah. This is like a double moment. Taking a shower is the same. Yeah. So this is not good for the environment. But I love to stand for a long time under the shower. Yeah. Because that's a moment where
I recognize
I come at ease, and thoughts are coming through. And sometimes I even make a little sketch on the mirror where there's the condense. So which is nice because it's only there for a moment and then it's gone.
Interestingly, I was just thinking of you mentioned daydreaming, and well, we made this exhibition together, Small Wonders, in 2017, which was about these extremely small devotional objects from the late Middle Ages. Yeah. And one of the things that they cause is that you focus intensely on what's happening inside those little objects. Yeah. And they, in a way, create a form of daydreaming.
Yes, yeah.
Do you need objects like that? Do you need, for example, a book or looking at your phone or whatever to do that? To create this small environment for yourself? Is the sun enough?
Yes. No, I don't need it, but I do it a lot.
Yeah.
And that has everything to do with trying to evoke those feelings and those thoughts. And so, yes, that's why I have lots of books at home, because that it just comes close. But it's all about getting a little bit close to that something that you cannot really grab.
Yeah. And when did it start? I mean, at a certain point, I think you must have become aware of this, that it always works this way, and I'm sure you're sort of you organize your life in a way around that.
Absolutely.
But
I would almost
there must have been a moment that you became aware of it.
Yes, but the silly thing is that I'm now 48, and I think I wonder about this every day.
Really?
Yeah. It's more that I would like to be in control. I would like to be able to find the words for that abstract process.
So you mean, I guess you love to create with your own hands, and yet the works you make are generally done by somebody else.
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah. True. It was a matter of choice because I wanted to work in all kinds of materials, and to become so good in the execution of all those materials that's almost impossible. Yeah. But also, it's in the end it's mostly a matter of for me it mainly happens in my mind. So I like to think about those objects. That's what I. That's what
could
I
you say
that
your work is more about forms, about shapes, than about materials?
Yeah, absolutely. Materials are secondary, but I think that's an enrichment. That it's so there are less boundaries, there are less limitations in my thinking. Yeah. And then there's also the moment where you seem to have collect enough that the thing itself starts to demand in a way for itself. And that's just a matter of that it makes, well, it's more a matter of that it makes sense. So all those components collected, they make sense together, and so you can speak of a set of rules. And so then then it becomes more comfortable. Yeah. So then I can speak about it. Then I can explain. But to go back to that question of the material, it's speaking about this, it describes already how long it could take, and when it's finally there, I need my time also to let it sink in. And in that period, everything which is there belongs there, and I do not have the objectivity yet to imagine it in another color, another material. But that comes later. Yeah, and if we stay a little bit longer with materials, what strikes me is that, and I probably know why, but that all the objects that you make have a kind of finish which is very high. The level of finish is very high. You never find any tool marks, or hardly any tool marks, as far as I can remember. So it almost looks as if it's industrially made and not handmade. And there is again, a handcrafted aspect of it. Does that have to do with the idea that you let others do the work? So it's not the signature of the handwriting of the maker anymore, because there are many more hands working on an object. That's part of it, but it is especially. I want my objects to be independent, that they can live their own lives, so to say. If there is a recognizable trace, an obvious trace, then that reveals something about a signature or a moment in time. Would you mind if they get scratched, or that they show wear? Not at all. So this is something that we need to speak about more, actually, also with the gallery, because we are, I think, very much focused on, if you think about to have to consume, then that's also that you want to freeze everything, but that's very strange. So
yeah, from my point of view as a museum man, that this is the most normal way of working with objects, to freeze them and to keep them in a perfect state.
Yes, and that is also beautiful, because we want those, if we are attached to objects, we want to treasure it, we want to keep it as long as possible, to learn from it, to enjoy. At the same time, it also has to move on. It will move on. Yeah. So it's not about to welcome it, but it's that then I
Life
feel
starts with the first scratch.
Yeah, yes. I think what I'm saying is, if it's really good, I let go. Yeah. Then my job is done.
But the interesting thing is, of course, for example, if you take your urushi works, that they have this sort of impeccable, shiny surface. It's highly polished lacquerware. Yeah. You hardly dare to touch them. So there is a kind of
what is this is interesting, because especially with the urushi lacquering, that is very different from stone, let's say, where one material defines the whole object. With the lacquering, it's a finishing. Yeah. I'm very attracted to this part, and that has everything to do that. It takes lots of time to apply it, to go through all the stages of that process. Sergei is doing this. It causes for Sergei that he is very on top of the object. I think there's nobody in my circle that knows the objects better than Sergei, because he is spending so much time with them. Yeah. And this handling, this finish with the sanding, and then with the lacquering, the brushing, name it. It's like it's a kind of a definition of the form. It's a kind of a it perfects the shape as a kind of a that you wrap it in. Yeah.
But it makes it difficult to use, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe there's a kind of contradiction, but this is very interesting to me to speak about this. This has everything to do with creating something solid, something perfect on one side, which allows something else on the other side. It's a kind of a compensation that I'm always busy with. Yeah. If I succeed there in the best possible way, then I get a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of freedom over there. And with Penona,
so it's not so much the freedom in the object; it's more the freedom in your mind.
Yes, but also when we were speaking about to have something, to conserve something, it has a lot to do with that as well. So this is also my way of claiming something, having something, my way of freezing the time.
Are you an artist?
I use the word artist because it is the most neutral in a way. It is the most. It's anything else becomes complicated, artificial.
But it implies that what you make is art.
In a way, it is. But it is.
I'm not denying that, but
I'm
provoking
but it's
you.
no, yeah. But what I try is I try to reason as much as possible through those objects, to speak about, so to honor them in a way by searching for words that serve them, that make them more clear. Because then we win something. From the moment that we speak about disciplines, whether art or design or whatever, we end up in circles. Yeah.
And it doesn't serve any end to categorize too much. I think it's.
I don't think
and
so.
Isn't it also up to the buyer, the collector, the user to or do you think it's?
But also there this goal to make something perfect, or to make something which is in balance with itself, that has everything to do with that, because it's not so much from me anymore. It becomes from itself, and it is then for other people to look at, to interpret. And I also imagine that if we lose a piece and we find it back here for 100 years, or whatever happens with the planet, and we have a different set of criteria to look and to judge, would it still be meaningful? Would it still be? And I dare to say that it will.
Why?
Because I think that all the elements that I've gathered to make a whole, they speak with each other. So there's a dialogue, that there's a chemistry within the components that I've collected. And
yes, but in say in 100 years' time, it might completely be completely
this is a
different.
closed circle. This is a closed circle. So this is free of time. This is free of place. This supports itself. It doesn't need anything from the outside. The outside will only, and then we come back at aging, will only discover a little bit of what is underneath.
But then you see it as if you describe it as a closed world, the object, and that's a rather
little universum, maybe.
egotistic way of looking at it, isn't it? I mean, there are also the users and the people that even in 100 or 1,000 years, they might look at it as an object of a certain period, or an object that has, because of its transformation, its signs of wear, and has become historically important, for example, shows its history. Yeah. But that is not of any concern to you?
True, but in the end, I think it's I'm doing the opposite. I think I am. Well, at least for myself, I'm always in search of beauty or something that touches me. Mm-hmm. And those objects, that is my way of being a little bit in control of that. And I think it's a bigger pleasure in the end for everybody if you manage to create something that lasts. And
sure. But this ambiguity, because that's what I think what you mean, is also part of your own work, isn't it? You're never sure whether you could sit on something, or whether it holds your weight, or whether you could use something to pour out anything, or whatever. I mean, there's always the tension almost between use and the form itself, or the purpose and the form. Yeah.
And if you say that, I have to think back to that moment that we already spoke about, that there's always a moment that the object starts to speak to you.
Yeah. Do you mind, for example, if somebody owns objects that you made and never uses them? Do you think they need to be used, or
not at all? Not at all. No.
Do they need to be experienced in a way? I think experience must be an important thing in the objects that you make.
Yeah, but that can also be looking. That if you give it a place in your home and you look at it, how the light shines on it during the day, or that you see a reflection or a shadow or whatever, that could also be an experience. To touch it, to give it different places in your interior. So that is for me also a way of using it or being with the object. So it is.
But in a way, it's strange that you, for example, design a jug or a pitcher or whatever, and it will never hold water or milk or.
No, because everything has multiple meanings. So I just try to stay as close to the original feeling as far as I'm able to visualize or to give presence to that feeling or that sensorial imagination that I have with that starting point. Mm-hmm. And trying not to let myself be confused or to be distracted by any means of how big should it be? How many persons should it serve? How could I clean it? How much should it cost? So I free myself of all those things, which is very difficult because there's a lot. Yeah. And the older we are getting, the more is added to that to those endless list of criteria. So that's why this process of creation it's interrupted a lot, and that's why it could take so long, because those moments where I'm free of those expectations, they are very small. There's always and it's also it's often where it takes me quite a while to discover that I'm not at the heart anymore of what I want to achieve, but that I'm more explaining myself, defending myself, because there are so many of those questions and expectations.
You were using animation, and isn't animation something that is really part of the essence of an artist, to make something that lives? You want to be God in a way, aren't you? Or don't you? I mean,
I like to make use of animation because it gives us to think through the spirit of the objects, and of course they are not alive. And so therefore humor plays a very important role. So it's a little bit to provoke a little bit the silliness that's inside them, but also from us in our urge or our wish to create something which can be next to us, which can speak to us, which can be amongst us, which is not possible, of course. So
it's dead material, it's a dead object,
yes,
in a way.
Yeah.
Still there is this deep wish to get to animate it, and you make use, for example, of natural materials generally, if I'm right.
Yeah, mainly.
Or close to natural.
Yes.
Porcelain is also natural, and glass, but we reworked. But for example, you wouldn't use plastics because they're maybe too dead. Is that true? Is there still a sort of sense of life in natural materials?
Many things are going through my mind. I remember many years ago that I said about wood that it is so beautiful because it has a drawing, it has a color of tone, it has a certain, if you touch it, it has a temperature. So a lot is given to you, which is increasing your responsibility to take good care of it. I think this challenge. So I'm challenged as an artist, as a being to make the best of this material. Now it's in my hands. It's my responsibility, and often also this is where it starts, and often I'm not even looking further. So it is. I'm not the one who took the material from somewhere. I'm also not questioning where it's coming from. I'm just, when it's in front of me, that's what it is, and then I look at it and I make it my own by choosing my words or finding my words to describe it, and how I'm going to make something of it, of which I am sure, or that I can convince myself. Maybe it's just more difficult to start with artificial material because it's blanco. But then thinking of what we were speaking before about my enormous appreciation for the material urushi, that you give it a very intense, layered beauty. But you do not know what you're looking at. So because it is not random anymore, it is not so much around us anymore, urushi. When people look at it, they do not know what they're looking at it. So they think it's plastic, but it's not. It's not. Yeah. If you are honest, if you're sensitive and honest to what you're feeling, and you look at it, you can see that it is not plastic because it has a different shine, it has a different it has a set of color tones. It's not one color. It is many colors next to each other. That's what gives us the depth and the trembling.
But why make yourself so complicated? By using urushi, which is a very elaborate way of applying a material, if you can reach maybe not exactly the same effect, but I mean, if people think it's plastic or people think it's car paint or whatever, they why go through all that trouble?
I think mostly it is what I tried to explain already before. It is that it's this kind of finishing of the object, a kind of a care that goes into and onto the object which is uncomparable. It's this subtle touch again and again and again over half a year, and if we speak about a table, it takes about a year.
Yeah,
you perfect what is underneath. So it is an enormous present to myself. So it is, I get something back in the best possible condition as I can imagine. I do not have to say, well, it was a little bit better in my mind, but
But then there's the appreciation of your audience, your public, the people who use it or buy it, if they don't notice this.
I think this again is a time thing. It's so if you allow yourself to listen to your feelings, and if you do so, I am sure that everybody can see and experience something different. It's only that we're a little bit shy to question about this. But then there's time, and then we can get comfortable with it after a while, and then we see, no, but I know plastic, I know glass fiber that shines like this, or that you see those little hairs of the glass fiber. No, it is not that I care. But it's my responsibility, and my focus really goes all the way into the object. That's where
I'm asking
what I can do and where I can make a difference and a contribution.
If I look to your oeuvre to date, it's to me it's very much part of you. I recognize in each object your handwriting, your signature. What's the secret? Why do I recognize it each time in all those materials and all those shapes as a piece of Aldo Bakker?
I think because it's feeling based. Through those objects, I give answers to the feelings I have, to the things that I'm longing for, and by following those, you get also a variation in form and in material and in color. So it is not a construct. It is not a formula, or it's not all depending on one aspect.
It's organic in a way.
In that sense, it's very organic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like the work of Brancusi. There is a parallel, I think, isn't there?
Yeah,
if
because
you look at his oeuvre, that's diverse, and it's.
Yes.
I mean, not just in. I can see certain parallels in forms, in a sensitivity to form and to material as well.
Yeah.
But could you draw this line a bit further?
Yeah. What I like so much, what is so strong about Brancusi, is that all objects are finished in themselves. They are all a whole. They are all like little universums. It's very rich because it's not. You have artists that they find a opportunity, let's say, to this is my entrance. You know, now I'm going to make a career on stacking.
Yeah.
I don't like that, because then you also start to claim a certain visual language, or a visual or a certain action, or and all those means to get to somewhere that is for all of us to make use of. And I think it's especially about the combination of all those elements. So I try to incorporate as much within one object. If I manage to do that, then it becomes more interesting, independent. Otherwise, you always. Otherwise, I also always stay present behind those objects. You see that object? That's about stacking, or that's about balance. That must be.
It's labeling.
That's something I don't like.
So that's maybe the secret then. Whatever language you use, it's always your language.
Yes, can't be otherwise. It's as I said, it's I give presence to that something that I'm longing for. So this is personal.